The question this afternoon, how blockchain could affect the events industry, I'd say something pithy and light about it, but I really don't know what blockchain is. So this is going to be definitely enlightening for me. Great pleasure to introduce Mark Stormont from London Event Productions and Josh Graham from Ehab to put me out of my misery, and you as well. Thank you.
Cheers, Nick. Cheers for that. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, both of us.
Awesome.
Let's stand. Let's not make this man's life harder than it needs to. Hi, everybody. My name's Mark Stormont. I run London Event Productions in Stormont, London. Production and entertainment agencies. A bit of a blockchain enthusiast, and I've been trying to think about how such an innovative technology could affect our industry in like 5, 10, 15 years' time. Josh?
So I'm Josh Graham. I actually know nothing about the events industry. I'm working on a construction-focused blockchain project. We're actually developing blockchain technology. We're using it. We're starting to sell our product. And so I'm really coming in at this to explain to you a little bit about what we're doing and how we're using it. And then Mark will take into how that's relevant to you guys.
Josh is here to give us a little bit of validity because he has a business that is using this software. So I'll do mine. You may want to sit, I don't know, because it's going to be a decent length.
Yes, I will.
Okay, so that would have been a useful slide to have up a moment ago. Apologies for that. So that's us. So now, just to give me some idea, how many of you in the room have like a 50% understanding of blockchain? 2, 3, 4, like 5, excellent, like 15, 20%. Therefore, I thought it would be a pretty good idea to give you guys a little bit of an intro. Why on earth this technology is causing such a stir? I'm going to be painting some pretty broad brushstrokes because this is a large topic and I need to condense it down as much as possible. If you're interested in this topic in general, one of my favorite talks on the subject is by this chap Richie Atuaru, who hosted this talk. It was a TEDx talk in America somewhere, called Blockchain Massively Simplified. And Richie spoke of gaps in the history of the world that have been filled by specific innovations. If you want to check the talk out, that's a QR code, but you can just Google that as well. He spoke about gaps in the history of the world that have been filled by innovations that have changed the world. He spoke about, in the 1400s, the innovation of the printing press, which filled what he called a knowledge gap. It was an incredible innovation that allowed the dissemination of knowledge like nothing else has ever done. In the 1980s, we had the Industrial Revolution starting in Britain and the internal combustion engine, which he said filled something like the power gap, or perhaps a transport gap, if you like, and it obviously shaped the world. Then about 25 years and 11 months ago, a man called Tim Berners-Lee invented the internet. That was 26 years ago. That is not a very long time, and our world has been changed ever since. And Richie says that blockchain could be such an innovation. It could fill such a significant gap. Now, what he was referring to was something that we do every day in our personal lives, in between each other, and then perhaps more importantly, between us and the companies we involve ourselves with, the companies we transact with, or perhaps even more importantly, how companies transact with each other. And what he refers to is trust. And blockchain stands a chance at automating trust, at making a system that is inherently trustworthy, but it's software, it's data, it's not relying on anything else. So right now, in the audience, I'm hoping we've got event production companies, we've got event agencies, we've got all sorts of event professionals. Your clients, as you will all know, place a great deal of trust in you. No matter how many testimonials you'll have online, how many references, maybe they've come to you directly, maybe they found you on Google, maybe you've done an event, maybe like before that they're trying to emulate, maybe your technology has been used in the past, and hopefully it's going to work again, but there is always a jump, there is always a certain level of trust, no matter what you can say. And this is what blockchain stands a chance at filling. Now, what the hell am I talking about? Perfect question, right? So, again, painting really broad brushstrokes, I'm going to try my hardest to condense blockchain technology in about 5 minutes. And I'm going to use the most prolific piece of event technology that we're all familiar with, an uplighter, to try and give it some substance. So, I was talking about this trust gap. Now, let's just get real and I'll stop trying to be so hyperbolic. Some of you in this room, can I just get a show of hands, like how many of you sell or have sold at any point in your lives uplighters? Are you serious? Have we not got any technical production companies? Any event agents? This is bizarre, one. Very strange. Well, if there are any technical production people in earshot, this man knows what I'm talking about. There'll be a scenario where you're pitching for a job and you're selling uplighters. And you'll quote something like £35 an uplighter, and they'll say, well, like a friend of a friend has got their own little tech company, and their quote says that it's £12.50 an uplighter, and it's about the same thing, so why on earth would I pay you? Well, you have then got to prove to them basically why that piece of kit is worth more to them than the competitors. And you may want to talk about the reliability of the equipment, and you can draw parallels to anything you guys do. Maybe the reliability, maybe the service history, maybe how many times the uplighter's been used, where the battery gets drained, so the less it's been used, the better condition it is. Maybe you're going to talk about who's maintained it. Maybe it's only ever been serviced by the original manufacturer. Maybe you want to go a step further. Maybe you want to present them with a log, with something that you keep in your offices, to talk about the history of your equipment. A history of how many times it's been used, who's serviced it, how well it's looked after. But that still exists within your company. And unfortunately, you are not a credible source to tell a client how amazing you are in a spreadsheet, effectively. And you can draw parallels to the service history of an event agency, or the success rate of your events, or how many testimonials you've had, how many problems you face and how fast you solve them. It's all very well telling your clients and even keeping an official record of it, but you are not a credible source. Blockchain was first conceptualized in 1991, which I didn't know, turns out. But it only became famous recently with Satoshi Nakamoto using it to enable his technology for Bitcoin. I said his, they, whoever Satoshi is. And this is the textbook definition. This is the neatest definition I've found of blockchain technology. Blockchain enables us to trust the verification of transactions to multiple random and anonymous connected nodes, all secured by complex cryptography. Catchy title. So you got it all now. I think I can stop. So, unsurprisingly, a blockchain is a chain of blocks. The easiest way to think about this is each block is just a line of data. Think of, for now, and I'm sure there are guys in the audience who know a little bit more than I do, but for now, think of a spreadsheet, think of a ledger. Each block is a line in that ledger. But the thing is, what we're getting at here is blockchain has the chance to be inherently immutable, inherently trustworthy, unhackable. So, think of those lines in your spreadsheet. Each one's a block. Each block contains 3 essential elements: data, a hash, and the hash of the previous block. The data, anything, just information. We're using uplighters. The value of that piece of equipment when it was first bought. Its service history. That's really distracting. The manufacturer, how much has been maintained, any information, any data about that uplighter you like. The hash, pretty simple. The hash is a digital fingerprint, essentially. It's a specific representation of whatever data's in that block. Think of it as a fingerprint. Ultimately, it would actually be a piece of computer code such as that. And then it also contains a hash of the previous block. So block number 2 refers directly to the fingerprint of block number 1. So they are chained together. They are dependent on each other. And if you change the hash of block number 1, block number 2 will flag up. The chain will be broken. Hopefully people are with me so far. So, in my uplighter analogy, this is what we could be looking at. Line 1 on that spreadsheet, block 1, uplighter was hired for the 32nd time. There was a critical error reported. Block number 2, the uplighter went through maintenance and the wireless DMX on it was not working and it wasn't fixed. And then hire number 3, so hire number 33, no errors were recorded because the wireless DMX wasn't used. But this is still a problem. Now, in a blockchain, it could look a little bit something like this. Just to make your lives easier, we've got, ignore this, but you can see how this hash is chained, is linked to this previous hash is linked here. So you can see, I'm not explaining that particularly well, but each block refers to its last one. So if we go to our uplighter example, say this data is stored in our company and we want to hide the fact that that wireless DMX isn't working, we try and amend it. Now, this hash for the central block has changed because the data's changed. And as I said, the basic hash of a block is a fingerprint of exactly the data. You cannot change the data without changing the fingerprint. So now the chain is broken and we have a problem. Now, you could, in theory, therefore rehash the third block, reprocess it, but without going into too much detail, the whole point of blockchains is that hashing blocks is very laborious. It takes a lot of time and a huge amount of computing power. You guys have all heard perhaps of mining Bitcoin. It's a similar thing. In a public blockchain like Ethereum, which is what Josh uses, the mining is proof of work. It's a lot of time and computing power to do that. But it is a protection. So far, the essentials of blockchain is that it is a ledger. It is append only. You can only update it going forwards. You can't edit it. Otherwise, it is rejected. The chain is broken straight away. Each entry is encoded. And the proof of work system makes it very, very difficult to amend the ledger and then change the rest of it, which you would have to do because you've amended it. But that's all very well, but technically you could still invalidate this. You could still tamper with this database. So you have a fourth layer of security, which is that blockchains are distributed. Now, what does that mean? These are different types of networks. Again, I'm sorry that I'm rushing through. Hopefully this is making sense. Centralized, decentralized, and distributed. In that centralized example, the database is in one place, and it's being referenced by many others. In the second decentralized version, you have multiple nodes being referenced by others, but you could still hack all of those nodes, let's say, and scramble the data. Or in the distributed example, everything is reliant. The only way of hacking a distributed network is to be in complete control of 51% of the network. So this, and again, let's just try and ground this in reality. I'm talking about perhaps keeping some record in your company of the validity of your work, the reliability of your uplighter, the quality of that piece of equipment, your work history if you're an event agent. So this is what a blockchain actually looks like. This is us, and then these are all hosted in the public blockchain, let's say Ethereum, or around the world. So if we try and cross that wireless DMX out and hide from our customers that one of our pieces of equipment has a problem, the rest of the network will realize that it doesn't match their blockchain anymore, and it will be rejected. And this is the fourth step in trying to create an inherently immutable system. So, that is what we end up with. The idea is that a well-implemented blockchain is a completely trustworthy log, a completely trustworthy ledger, an unhackable database. And in that, you can put anything you like. And I'll try and give some more examples for the events industry at the very end, but I'm going to hand over to Josh so that he can perhaps give some concrete, pun intended, examples of how he is using blockchain in his construction company. Hopefully that was made sense to everybody. I realize it was quite quick. I'm going to be around afterwards to ask questions. Over to you, Josh.
Awesome. Cheers, Mark. So yeah, that can sound a little boring, maybe. And I think, and that isn't a dig at you, Mark. It can be sometimes uninteresting. So I think it's really the benefits that blockchain brings, which are the things that are important and exciting. It's this ability to trust each other and transact more fluidly. And so what I'm trying to do is basically build a digital platform which enables us to more efficiently create sustainable urban developments. Because, let's face it, we need those things, otherwise the planet is screwed, and some of us won't be able to afford houses. There's a whole host of issues in the construction industry. But the biggest thing is that there's just a complete lack of innovation. It's barely changed for a very long time. And when you think about it, many other industries around the world have been changing at a very rapid pace. And so what was confusing to me was, why isn't the industry catching up? And this is a pretty crazy figure. So 85% of projects in the construction industry go over time and over budget. I'm talking about larger projects, right? Although you've maybe experienced this if you're doing like an extension to your house, and you know that is insane. This building that we're built in maybe went over time and over budget. I don't know, but probably. And so, yeah, it was that statistic and a whole host of other issues in the construction industry which made me think, okay, we need to change this. We need to have some sort of platform which enables us to close these inefficiency gaps and try and bring about a construction revolution. And I think blockchain plays a key part in that. So the thing that we're doing at the moment is basically create a platform which brings together all of the different elements that make up a construction project, digitizes them, and then aims to simplify them, because I don't know if you know much about the construction industry, but there's so many different players trying to take slices of the pie, and that basically means that you take away a lot of value from potentially the profit of the people who are actually doing work, and it also means that delays are more likely to happen because you have a lot of different people who are sort of intermediaries in this system. So that's, and I'll just go through the different elements, the really basic elements that make up a construction project. So finding land or a project, forming a team to build on that land, raising funds to fund that project. I should know this off by heart. Managing the project, so actually making sure all of the different elements come together correctly, and then selling those properties or leasing them or whatever. So I'm going to really just focus down on the management piece because that's the actually interesting blockchain piece. All of the other pieces don't actually use blockchain because you don't have to use it for everything, and you shouldn't use it for everything, certainly. But in the case of a construction project, you have a cost plan which says, these are going to be the costs of my project, who's going to do X, Y, Z, what are the materials that I'm going to buy to build this thing, right? We then turn that into a smart contract. Now, Mark didn't talk about this, but all a smart contract is a piece of code which sits inside the blockchain, which says if a certain condition is met, then trigger an event. So an example in the construction industry would be, if Bob delivers some bricks on site and we confirm in the blockchain that that event has happened, then trigger a payment to his organization. That's what it does. It automates a thing based on the trusted ledger that we were talking about earlier. And so this would potentially be what your cost plan would look like in really simple terms. Contractor A will do this, contractor B will do this. And what you then need to do is basically have a system, i.e. the Ehab platform, which enables you to record what is happening on site. And so we were talking about the trustworthiness of that data. Obviously, in the example that Mark gave, the lamp is automatically telling you, it's saying how long it charged for, whether it's been maintained. That's a digital input into the system. In the construction industry, unfortunately, at the moment, it's a much more laborious, people-centric process. And so the way that we sort of try to help validate that data in a more effective way is by having the person who's done the work sign off that they've done it, have the project manager sign off that someone has done that work, and then there would be another third party who would have to say that they've done the work. So I think the example I give is an electrical cabling system, you might actually need a fire safety officer to sign off that this has been done properly. You would need multiple different people signing off that this has happened. And the useful thing in the construction industry is that you then have a record of all of the different people who were involved in building this project, who they were, who they worked for, what they were paid. You also know what assets they used, what was the brand of the electrical cabling, who did you buy that from, etc. And because it's a permanent ledger, it means that 20 years down the line, you can go back to that ledger immediately and say, oh, cool, it was Sam who did this, or this company who owned this, or whatever. And the interesting thing is, within that blockchain, because it's a digital system, you can have timers in there. So in the case of in this industry, it would be talking about like what is the warranty of a certain piece of asset in that build system, or how long until I need to replace something in that build system. And you have this all permanent, all digital, all trusted, just there. You don't have to have like a crazy paper record, and when you sell a building, that person automatically knows the history of it, etc. So why is the Ehab platform interesting? Well, what we're looking to do and what we're doing at the moment is basically partnering with people who use modern methods of construction. And I realize I'm talking to people in the events industry, but what this effectively, modern methods of construction are 3D printed housing manufacturers, modular housing manufacturers, off-site housing manufacturers, people who are using a lot more streamlined and digital and production line sort of technologies in building homes. The reason that that's beneficial is because you don't have the laborers on site, doing the work and having to sign off that they've done the work. A couple of our partners literally have a robot which prints the panels for a house, and they can print a house in 3 hours, and then all of that data is immediately recorded to the blockchain, so you know what went into the panels, who was the person who needed to be paid, and everything. And it's digitally signed into there by a machine, and so basically there's not really that many ways that you can tamper with that. Or at least if it has been tampered with, you know exactly who's liable. It's this company whose factory it is. And so, yeah, I just wanted to close by saying any blockchain system, if there's a digital input into it and you can validate the data by way of basically a robot, that's really important and that's really helpful. If you have to rely on people, then get multiple people to sign off on that information so that you can at least go some way to protecting the validity of that data. So yeah, I know if that might have been completely irrelevant to a lot of you, but if anyone's involved in construction in any way, come find me. I'm trying to click on, or just check out ehab.co if you're interested in finding out more. And if you are interested in having a super sustainable, sexy eco home, also come find me because we're doing a couple of projects at the moment, so let me know. And I'll let Mark sort of close off in terms of how that works.
Okay. We good? So, I might have slightly misjudged the audience, judged on the uplighter question. So, would anyone like to tell me, like, what they do? Because what I want to do is just for 5 minutes talk about some practical applications. But have we got... Have we got a handheld? Sorry. I love it. At the beginning we were like, we're not going to have questions because we haven't got time, and now I'm in the middle of it asking a question. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hi, man.
All right. Actually, what we're doing a lot of research for the blockchain technology. And,
okay.
Actually, came here to meet you guys. So what we're talking about is we're looking for the blockchain technology as
Could you hold the mic a little bit closer? Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, as the experience of how the internet's working right now. And we took the internet experience and we implemented as creating our blockchain. There is a lot of challenges it comes with it. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about it, first, with the blockchain right now, there is a one type of ledgers for everything. But for instance, for the event technology, for the ticketing, it should be multiple ledger, different type of ledgers to accommodate a different type of ticketing or different type of the other things. How can we make it easy to adapt the blockchains to create a different blockchains can interact it with each other? They're similar like the internet.
I think what I'd like to do whilst we've got everyone here is... No, it's right. first of all, that's a Josh question. And second of all, let's talk about it afterwards.
Yeah,
Because what I'd
absolutely.
quite like to do for the last 5 minutes is try and give like a sign-off of what's practical for perhaps some of the members of the audience, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, man. Have we got any other industries? Like I was thinking event agents or are you guys from like technology suppliers? You're from a venue, okay. I was thinking about venues this morning. Venues are harder, although obviously there's some link with Josh. But I will talk about that a little bit. Have we got a venue? Any other industries? Does anyone have a job? You are an event agency. Excellent. Event manager for an event tech company. FinTech company, okay. Financial services.
Director of Engineering at Reed Exhibitions, an exhibitions company.
Exhibitions. Okay. So, I think what I'll do then is just focus on one area that I was going to talk about. Jesus, I need to stand over here. So, what I was talking about a little bit was equipment. I mean, there are a lot of people selling equipment around here, but you get an idea. I've spoken about that enough. Staffing, I'll touch on very, very briefly, because some of you will use crewing companies and staffing agencies. The idea here is if you are a crewing company, and let's say you're making a pitch to a catering company who's going to cater for Donald Trump or cater for the Queen, and you're the only staffing agency that can say all of the identities and work history of all of our staff are validated on a blockchain, and you're pitching to cater to some of the most powerful and important people in the world where security is paramount, how do you think you're going to do in that pitch compared to your competitors? They'll do their criminal background checks, but you are the only people who have an inherently external, trustworthy validation, complete history of every single one of your staff. Now, event agencies I'm going to group in from your side, from the client's point of view as well, although it's slightly less relevant. But if you are any sort of event organizer and you use a blockchain system to track the success rate of your events, the testimonials, the value, not necessarily who you worked for because your clients aren't going to want that information publicly displayed, how many problems, how quickly those problems were solved, and those data points within that system are validated by multiple trusted sources, which is what happens in Josh's case. This isn't just data that's put in by one person, because then it could just be made up as much as anything else. That system, that log can't be tampered with. A record of effectively your success as a business or as a professional. So in some ways, you could implement blockchain to be the CV of your company, the CV of your services. And I did wonder whether blockchain stands a chance over 10, 15 years' time to remove the need for laborious tenders, for really, really elongated pitches. If you're pitching, any of you will be pitching to someone at some point, and the bigger the pitches get, the more questions they ask, and the more proofs you have to supply, the more testimonials, the more references, the more health and safety documents. The more I have a policy for racial diversity in our company. My company has 5 employees, but I have that. We have a policy for, oh hello, don't do that. We have a policy for diversity and discrimination and like bribery. I have a policy for bribery. I've got 5 staff, but I have to have that because I'm pitching for very, very big jobs, and they ask these questions. And you have to prove it. You have to submit all this. But if you have immutable systems doing the proving for you, that's tracked your whole company, your staff, your equipment, your service, the problems you solved, in a system that cannot be hacked, then maybe tenders will become a thing of the past. So, those were some pretty broad brushstrokes. We are out of time. We've got about 2 minutes. I would love if any of you are interested to talk to you afterwards, because we've got people from FinTech, we've got people who are probably client side. I don't know what half of you guys do. I'd be fascinated if you'd like to learn more so we can make this a little bit more relevant to you. But other than that, thank you very much for listening, and I hope that was interesting.